Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. It is the off season, and that means one thing: 2025 predictions are coming thick and fast. And we're going to go into the WTA, so my WTA year end top 10 rankings. And I'm going to be predicting from 10 to 1 every single player I think that is going to be in the top 10 as of the end of the year, as of the end of the 2025 season. It's really tough on the WTA side because it's so stacked, and the scene on the women's tour is just so phenomenal right now. Honestly, have not been this entertained, I think, by the women's tour for quite some time. In the last maybe 2 to 3 years have been really, really good, and I'm very much looking forward to what 2025 will bring. There's a lot of interesting storylines going into it, and also a lot of different personalities and styles that could potentially gel and create something special, I think, in 2025. Hopefully, everyone stays fit as well. That's, of course, one of the biggest things is players not being able to stay fit and potentially having some big layoffs in crucial moments during the year, and that's only increasing with the increased workload on players throughout the year. Before we do get into the remember that like button, do subscribe if you're new, and do leave a rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform. Thank you to all our members who are also supporting the channel. You guys are legends for doing so. So let's get into this then. So we've got our actual top 10 for 2024. We're going to briefly touch on that, and then we'll start diving into the nuts and bolts of my predicted top 10, and we'll go from 10 to 1. I'm also going to mention my players just outside of the top 10. So players who I think will be there or thereabouts, and they might potentially creep in, but I think they're going to be just outside, just missing that top 10 ranking. And there's a few of them. So, and to be honest, it could be double the length that I've put for those players outside the top 10. And I've gone for 5 players currently. So, for the actual top 10 as of the end of 2024, look, I mean, no surprises with Sabalenka being world number one, of course, won 2 slams, and she had a very, very impressive season. And number 2, Iga Swiatek, who was usurped towards the end of the year by Sabalenka for that number 1 spot. A pretty solid year, no doubt, winning Roland Garros, and probably maybe not the season that she would have hoped to have produced, given I'm sure her ambitions would have included winning more than 1 slam. Knowing her, she's got incredibly ambitious and driven attitude to the tour and to her vocation. In all honesty, she is very, very dedicated, and I just have a feeling that, and we'll touch upon this more in detail for 2025, but she could have a very interesting year coming up for a number of reasons. But still very dominant on clay, beat Sabalenka in Madrid, which was a big win. Sabalenka's been so good in Madrid the last couple of years. And yeah, Roland Garros, of course, after saving that match point to Osaka in the second round, I think it was. And that was just a phenomenal match and comeback from her to then go on to win the title. And number 3, Coco Gauff, a really strong end of the year. We'll touch upon that more in detail as we go through our predicted top 10. Number 4, Jasmine Paolini, back-to-back Grand Slam finals at Roland Garros and also at Wimbledon. Zheng Xinwen at number 5, Olympic gold medalist, of course. And the Chinese young player has been, I mean, I've always picked her on top of also Cam and also Gil as my young player of the year. And this year, you can't really pick her as your young player of the year because she has been too good, and she's more in the conversation of, maybe most impressive run, or, maybe most improved potentially. But I think she's just now floating around number 5. She's very much in the mix now to start challenging for Grand Slam titles after, of course, making the final of the Australian Open. Number 6, Elena Rybakina, and maybe not the season she would have liked. I think it's fair to say a long layoff as well. Coaching changes, injuries, I think mental fatigue as well. So a lot of factors coming into play this season, and I'm sure she'll want to play more matches this year, that's for sure. Number 7, Jessica Pegula. Solid season, and again, we'll get into that in a bit more detail shortly. And number 8, Navarro, her first top 10 ranking, young American player breaking through, and she had a breakthrough season. And number 9, Daria Kasatkina. She's been a very consistent player, of course, within the top 20 for a while, and just hasn't managed to make that major step towards, I mean, she's made a semi-final at Roland Garros, but not consistent semi-finals, and also no Grand Slam finals or titles, of course, in the locker at the moment. And at number 10, Wimbledon champion Barbara Krejcikova, who has been very up and down, I think it's fair to say, but had a phenomenal run at Wimbledon, taking the title there in impressive fashion. So this is where it now gets interesting as we delve into my predicted top 10. So, at number 10, I've gone for a player who I'm hoping is not going to be that much of a surprise. A young player, very young player, only 20 years of age. And I've gone pretty big here. I've gone for Diana Schneider, the lefty from Russia. Has had a really impressive year. She's currently ranked number 13 in the world, so only just outside. And what's even more impressive is her results this year. It's only her second year on tour, win percentage of 67%. So an increase from her first year on tour, which was 59%, which, by the way, is very impressive as well for her first 2 years on tour. But forget about that. Forget about that. She has won an impressive 4 titles on the WTA Tour, in addition to winning a Challenger tournament as well, and also lost a final of a Challenger tournament as well. Now, the tournament she won Huhin at the start of the year. She then won a Challenger in Paris, beating Emma Navarro, who's a top 10 player, of course, in the final. Then won Bad Homburg on grass, beating Donna Vekic, who went on to win the semi-finals of Wimbledon and the Olympic final as well, but beat her in 3 sets. In Budapest, she beat Sasnovich, and in Hong Kong, she beat Katie Bolter. Look, she has had a very impressive year. Title town, right? Title town. She's won multiple titles this year. She, in my eyes, she's looking very hungry to start rocketing through the rankings, and she doesn't seem satisfied. Her hunger doesn't seem satisfied with just winning these tournaments. She wants to push on in the bigger tournaments, start making big breakthroughs, and I can see that happening in 2025. I'm very impressed with her game. I'm impressed with her mental fortitude, and I'm impressed with her competitive edge that she shows and has shown in her second year on tour. So that is saying something. She's a special talent, and I do think that she will break through, in my opinion anyway, into the top 10. In terms of number 9, so for number 9, I've gone for someone who a lot of people may disagree with, but after watching her at Wimbledon and also throughout the year, she's had a pretty impressive year. So I've gone for someone who's had some very solid Grand Slam results this year and also has managed to stay fit, which is a big positive. She's played double the amount of matches exactly as she did last year, 56 matches at a 66% win rate, which is her second best season in terms of win percentage of her career. She did hit the 72% mark in 2021, but for 2022 and 2023, there were dips. So a very impressive year in 2024, and probably given the fact that she's also played a number of matches and managed to stay fit for at least large chunks of it anyway. In terms of other notable wins or runs this year, she beat Buskova in Washington, so 250. And, I was impressed with her general, just, well, I'd say I've been pretty impressed with her level, I think, this year. That's been the most impressive thing for me. US Open, she made the quarterfinals, Cincinnati semifinals, also made Wimbledon round of 16, losing to Donna Vekic. And Donna Vekic, of course, made the semi-finals. And at Roland Garros, okay, round two. And then round three at the Australian Open. But I think what's been more impressive is the fact that she's made quite a few runs. Bad Homburg quarterfinals. Washington, we said she won. Beijing, she made the semi-finals there, lost to Coco Gauff. Semi-finals of Ningbo at the end of the year as well. So clearly been very consistent generally with her results. Hasn't had a lot of early losses throughout the year, and that's been a big, big positive for me. And I think the level is there. She just needs to stay fit, I think, and the confidence will continue to flow if she's able to do that, in my opinion. So, at number 8, I've gone for a Grand Slam champion from 2024. And no, it's not Sabalenka. No, it's not Swiatek. That leaves us with Barbara Krejcikova. Now, Barbara Krejcikova is a player who tends to go under the radar a lot, and there's a few reasons for that. Of course, she's had some really long layoffs. She's had some injuries, some moments in her career in seasons where she just hasn't really hit those heights you'd expect. The form has really dipped. However, what's quite impressive for me is the way that she's bounced back this year to win that Wimbledon title. That was a big, big moment, I think, in her career. Obviously, made the WTA finals in the end as well this year by being ranked number 10. But because she was a Grand Slam finalist, Grand Slam winner even, and the WTA introduced some new rules, she ended up qualifying in place of the number 8 ranked Emma Navarro, which of course would have been heartbreaking for Navarro, but a big plus, of course, for Krejcikova, who in fairness made a pretty decent run at the WTA finals as well. Now, look, she is not just a grass court player. She's won Roland Garros, of course, in the past, and she's won titles and Masters 1000 titles on hard court. She is very capable on all surfaces. She's got a varied game. She's got a very, very impressive skill set. The question is just going to be, can she, one, stay fit for the majority of the year, and two, can she manage to find some consistent form and level throughout the year as well, because that's been a big, big issue, I think, for her. I mean, if you look at this year, she's at 55%. Sorry, she's at 57% win rate for the year. But that's a dip from 2023, which was 64%. At 2022, it was 63%. 2021 was her best year when she won Roland Garros. That was at 71%. And then before then, they're all just above 60 or below. So, her win percentage this year is below her career average of 62%. Not ideal, in honesty. And of course, there were a lot of remarks made, and even by her, talking about the fact that she should be included in that Big Four conversation with Rebecca Sabalenka, Swiatek. She won Wimbledon, and people said, okay, yeah, she's back. And then she dipped off again as well until the WTA finals. Let's see how she gets on next year, but I would be surprised if she doesn't make her way into the top 10 if she's fit, because I think she'll find form at least in enough patches throughout the year to warrant a top 10 ranking. For Jessica Pegula, it's been an interesting, very, very interesting season, and I'm going to stick with her at number 7, so that's exactly the same spot as she was for 2024. And look, I mean, Jess has had a very interesting season. Some breakthroughs, for example, the US Open final. that was a really important moment, I think, for her to finally break through and put herself in a position to be just one match away from a Grand Slam title. Sabalenka won a very, very hard fought match, 7-5, 7-5. And what was even more impressive, I think, in that US Open was Pegula beating Muchova, played some phenomenal tennis that tournament. Iga Swiatek, of course, and didn't just beat her, but beat her in straight sets comfortably, 6-2, 6-4. She also made the final of Cincinnati, losing again to Sabalenka in not so tight a match, 6-3, 7-5. In terms of her win percentage for the year, I mean, it's been a dip from 2023, and the ranking reflects that. But it is her second best season, really. I won't count 2018 when she only played 5 matches. So for 2024, it's at 70%. Her highest year was 2023, when she ended up winning 77% of her matches. Now, obviously, she was injured for a pretty large chunk of the clay swing, was Jessica Pegula. So she's actually very competent on clay. So that could have had an effect. And also just the fact that she came back, and how she looking post injury. I think post injury she obviously made some great runs, Cincinnati US Open. So not too concerned about that. I'm more concerned about how she's able to potentially figure out and problem solve against these top players at the Grand Slam. And she's now got close to that US Open final. There's nothing to say she can't make another final. Whether she wins it or not, I'm not sure. But she's incredibly consistent, is Jessica Pegula. I'm sure a lot of people expect her to win, especially in the earlier rounds, and then start going on to challenge for silverware, which I'm sure she will. In terms of 2024, well, titles, there were a couple. So one in Berlin, where she beat where she beat Anna Kalinskaya. So Pegula beating her 6-7, 6-4, 7-6. And then in Toronto, Jessica Pegula beat Amanda Anisimova. Great run from her, of course, winning 6-3, 2-6, 6-1. So those are the tournament wins for 2024. Very impressive from her. 30 years of age. It's going to end up becoming make or break for her in the next couple of years if she wants to win a slam before she retires, I would imagine. Right. For number 6, I've gone for the Italian pocket rocket, Jasmine Paolini. So before the Italians watching this go ballistic and slate me for why I've moved her down 2 spots, I'll explain that in a second. Look, I mean, a phenomenal season for her, of course. She made the final of Roland Garros, the final of Wimbledon, and also won the Dubai duty-free Masters 1000 tournament as well. She had a career best year, winning 67% of her matches, which is an increase of 12%. Of 15% even. And that was, of course, very impressive in terms of titles and how she got on there. Well, there's a few things to note. Obviously, won the Billie Jean King Cup with Italy, which isn't an individual title, but it's a team title. And the Billie Jean King Cup is still an impressive feat for me. And she also managed to do it by winning one of the final matches, of course. And then the other win was, as we mentioned, that Dubai Duty Free tournament where she beat Anna Kalinskaya. Lost the Roland Garros final to Iga Swiatek and Wimbledon final to Barbara Krejcikova. But a great showing from her, a really, really impressive showing. Now, what I am going to say is she was ranked number 30 last year and has now risen 26 places. She is, the most improved player, I think, on the WTA tour. I do think it's going to be difficult for her to replicate that form going into 2025. If I'm honest, I'm not saying that she's going to completely drop off, but I do think it's going to be difficult to replicate exactly what she did. I think it might take a season for her to just establish herself in the top 10 and then really go full steam ahead, potentially in 2026, if she wants to try and look at major honors. That's how I saw it anyway. And number 5, um, look, I mean, it's a tough one. I've actually gone for Zhang Xinwen to stay at number 5. And you might maybe understand when I do my top 4, but look, I mean, she had a phenomenal year, Olympic gold medal, WTA finals final, Australian Open final. So she's not far off winning a slam, that's for sure, or at least, a Masters 1000 tournament. And she had a career best year, 74% of matches won, which is impressive to say the least. And that's an increase from 64%. So, we're talking about a 10% increase. In terms of titles this year, won Tokyo, beating Sophia Kenin in October, lost the Wuhan final to Zheng. And then we talked about the Olympics, of course, where she won against Donna Vekic, beat Iga Swiatek en route to that as well, which was very, very impressive. And then we also had Palermo, which was a very impressive win over Mokhova, and the Australian Open final where she lost to Arina Sabalenka. Also, of course, lost the final of the WTA finals to Coco Gauff in one of the most entertaining matches of the year, losing in a final set tiebreaker when she was serving for the match. But, she's a phenomenally talented player. And what's great about her is that she has a different personality. She doesn't really seem particularly happy when she loses. She has this kind of air, this chip on her shoulder that she thinks she should win all these big titles when she puts herself in that position. A lot of, let's say, non-warm handshakes and greetings at the net as well with opponents when she loses. And, I can kind of relate to that in a bit, a bit anyway. I think she's just got the mentality that she should be winning these matches, and she feels that her level is good enough to be winning major honors consistently. And there's a few things that she needs to iron out, but I think generally speaking, she's right. So she'll stay at number 5 for me in my year-end rankings. And number 4, I've gone for someone who hasn't had the best of years when it's come to just consistency, but what's probably impressive is that she's actually had the best season when it's come to win percentage for the year at 77% win rate is better than her previous best, which was in 2023 last year. So she's trending in the right direction. Of course, won her title, her Wimbledon title in 2022, where her win percentage was only 63% or 64% even for the year. So, yeah, look, I mean, despite her having that long layoff, from Wimbledon until the WTA finals, obviously played the one match at the US Open and lost. Yeah, I mean, very, very impressive to say the least. Won 3 titles as well. I mean, what more is there to say? Talking about recent results, and it was a second round. Sorry, even she lost to a qualifier in Jessica Ponce. Was a walkover, anyways, after winning her first round match. So played. I mean, since Roland Garros, she's only played Berlin, Wimbledon, Cincinnati, lost in the first round, US Open second round, Riyadh finals or WTA finals, and the Billie Jean King Cup, where she played as well. So not really much tennis for her this year in comparison to maybe prior years. I mean, she still played 56 matches. That's pretty solid. But compare that to 64 matches in 2023, 63 in 2022 is obviously a dip. But what's been impressive is that when she has played, the quality has been very high for the most part anyway. So we'll see how she gets on when it comes to the start of the new season. She was at number 6 in 2023. I'm moving up to number 4. She's essentially switching places with Jasmine Paolini in my top 10 predictions. Now, number 3, I've gone for someone who's probably not a surprise. In honesty, I've gone for someone who, well, I think she might be a surprise, actually. I say it might not be a surprise, but this is probably going to surprise a lot of people, and I'll tell you why I've done this. I've gone for Iga Swiatek at number three. Man, this would be one of the worst year-end finishes she would have had in a while if this were to happen. In fact, I think I've got her ranking history in front of me. Yeah, so the last time she was ranked outside of number one, even, well, let's say out of the first two or top two ranking spots, was in 2021, where she was ranked number nine at year end. So since then, 2022, 2023, she was world number one, and now at 2024, she's world number two. Now, look, the reason why I think she might potentially not have the best of seasons is because of the failed drugs test. Now, I know she got a 1 month ban, but WADA can also appeal, from my knowledge. So that's going to be hanging over her head. And also, there's going to be a lot of questions around it, I'm sure, in 2025 at the start, especially if she's winning a lot of matches and she looks incredibly consistent and powerful. But, in my opinion, I don't think. Um, yeah, I don't think that Swiatek is going to completely forget about what happened. Mentally, I think she's going to struggle with that initially throughout the year. And I could be wrong, but that's just the feeling I get, that this could be a slightly more difficult season for Iga. And it might not just be to do with the field, it might also be to do with off court incidents as well. So, in terms of win percentage for for Swiatek, sorry, even, she actually had her second best season when it came to win percentage at 88% or 87.7%. So that's a real plus for Iga Swiatek. And then, yeah, I mean, similar to Rybakina, didn't play that much tennis, in fairness, since Roland Garros. Although she did play the Paris Olympics, of course, which would have taken a lot out of her as well. Um, yeah, I mean, not really much else to say apart from, if she doesn't let it affect her, she could definitely be number two, if not even number one in my rankings. But my feeling is that it's going to take a bit of time for her to process this completely. And until the journalists also give it a rest, it probably won't dissipate from the tennis world until, I don't know, until it's mentioned an exhausting amount of time, or times even, I would imagine. Right, and number two, I've gone for Coco Gauff. So this is a pretty big call. Pretty big call, I would say. And I'll tell you why. So the first thing that stands out is a win percentage, 76.1%, which is exactly the same as last year, and her two best seasons so far. In terms of titles this year, she beat Zheng Xinwen in the Riyadh finals, beat Karolina Muchova in the Beijing final. She then beat Alina Svitolina at the start of the year in Auckland. And so, yeah, won all four finals, which is very impressive from someone who is still so young at 20 years of age. So Coco Gauff at number two for me. I was impressed with her WTA finals run, the best of the season, beating Iga Swiatek, Jessica Pegula, Arina Sabalenka, Zheng Xinwen. She lost a dead rubber to Barbara Krejcikova, but I don't think that's really saying much. Then number one, you can guess it. I'm sure you know who the player is because I haven't noted them down yet. And that will be Arina Sabalenka. I mean, what a season she had, in honesty. Coco Gauff, we were talking about the fact that she's been much improved earlier. She's won a Masters 1000 tournament. She won the WTA finals. She's been and had a very strong end to the season. Sabalenka, she's just been strong throughout, in honesty. Strong at the start at the Australian Open, strong at the US Open. Roland Garros and Wimbledon don't really seem to be the most helpful surfaces for Daniel's game, in honesty. So, yeah, we'll see how Sabalenka proves with them as well. But yeah, Sabalenka is my pick for the year end number one again. I just think she's going to be dominant in a lot of the other tournaments. Her skill set and her application and the shot selection is only getting better and better each match. So Yeah, interesting. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't done so already, remember to that like button, do subscribe if you're new, and do leave a rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform. Just to summarize, this is our predicted top 10 2025 WTA players as of the end of the year. Sabalenka, Goff, Swiatek, Rybakina, Zheng, Paolini, Badosa, and Schneider. And just outside, actually, I didn't mention this, I've got a few. So I've got Mira Andreeva, who had a phenomenal season. She came from 46 in the world to 16. Navarro, who also broke into the top 10, which is mighty impressive from, again, not a favorable ranking. Kasakina, I know she's been in the top 10 this year, but I just see the others potentially overtaking her. And then last but not least, I've got Donna Vekic, who, yeah, has had a really good year as well. Of course, a woman in the semi-finals. Uh, I mean, she's had a very solid year. Yeah, very interesting to see how Coco, Sabalenka, Swiatek, Rabak, and how those guys end up fighting it out for multiple titles. And I think the younger guns are coming through as well, so they're going to have to be careful. Already, a couple of them are in my predicted top 10 anyway. Guys, thank you so much. Stay safe and well, and we'll see you on the next video.